And well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I had two questions and I didn't know which one to ask. One's like really deep and the other one's kind of deep. So I'm going to ask them both. So, when was the last time you felt truly fulfilled? And I thought
This,
about that and I'm like, wow, that's a pretty deep question. And then it got deeper because the other question is, does success equal happiness? And I'm like, man, somebody's got some great questions. So I found who got those questions and I had to get her on the show. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell. How are you today?
I am wonderfully well, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So this is a mouthful too. So you're an attorney. So we have no attorney jokes today. So I promise no attorney jokes. You're an attorney at LMB Law Offices and the CEO of Leading Through Living Communities. So we all know what a law firm is, but I want to know, tell me about Leading Through Living Community. What's that all about?
Actually, it's everything else that is not law. So I've had a beautiful life, had my fingers in a lot of different pies, Dave. It's kind of like you. Speaker, author, publisher, media giant. I have done it all. And so that all has come under Leading Through Living, LLC. And when people ask me to summarize, so where does that bring you? How do you get to where you are now? And I'm just like, I'm a being having a very human experience. And so I'm learning and living and growing just like you, just enjoying myself.
Do you fight crime under that living through leading community too? It seems like that's the only thing missing is at night she fights crime. So,
So I do that under the law firm.
oh, there we go. Okay, good idea. Good call. That's awesome. Well, thanks for jumping on today. Again, I love thinking about the fulfillment. I love the question about success and happiness. So, fill us in. Why don't you tell us? You started the people, some of the people around the world listening right now, Lynita, they'd love to hear that journey from being in corporate America to being an entrepreneur because there's a lot of people listening right now that are desirous of that journey. So, I love to unpack that. So fill us in on how that looked for you.
Absolutely. So I have known that I wanted to be an attorney since I was young. I'm talking about watching attorney shows on TV and saying, I'm just going to be just like that. It's going to be exciting and I'm going to help people and live ever happily ever after. But in the meantime, when it was time to go to undergrad, my mom was like, you need to pick a major that you can get a job because pre-law, that's a no-go, right? So I was very involved with the Future Business Leaders of America. And so
Okay.
I majored in business, and then my secondary major was accounting. And when I was studying for my accounting licensure, um, I was working in public at the time it was banned. I did not like it. And it was two things. So I joined at the time when they merged PricewaterhouseCoopers. And if anyone has joined an organization during a merger, they know that is just not the time to do it because the people who you interviewed with who were happy and excited and just can't wait to mentor and develop you, well, now they are scared for their jobs. And the work that they would normally happily give to you to kind of fumble over, they are hoarding to themselves, right?
Sure.
Right. And so I was like, man, but it can't be like this everywhere. And it wasn't. I actually went to work with Deloitte after I got married and moved to Ohio. It was a great experience. But then I remembered my passion, which was law. And so I applied to one law school and one law school only, and that was Georgia State University, and had an amazing experience working full time as well as going to law school full time. And I was able to intern with the EEOC. I worked on a congressional campaign and helped her to become a congresswoman. And
Congrats.
I thank you. But I realized just how much I love being out and about with people. And I knew law firm once I graduated was not the way I wanted to go because it's very structured, very much like Big Four accounting. And there's everything right with doing that early on. You learn professionalism, you learn the importance of mentorship and development. You learn the importance of continuing education, right?
Mm,
Whether somebody is paying for you or making you do it for your licensure or not, you
sure.
become a life learner. But still, I knew I didn't want to go into an office every day, according to someone else's dictates. And so when I graduated, I was very much looking for something that fit that spirit, and I started recruiting. And so that was the thing that I did not know was missing was the sales piece in order to go out on your own. We worked both ends of the desk. We got jobs and we got people jobs. And so I was finally ready to launch out. Um, and I had the other part that people don't tell you, which is you need financial backing. I had a great man, my husband. He
Oh,
was,
there you go.
yeah, yeah,
Good
he was
man.
very, oh, that man is a king. He supported everything that I was doing, and it's easy, I think, to support someone when you see him working a lot. I would get up early in the morning, I would work during
Sure.
the day, at night, the weekends, everything. Um, but Dave, I wasn't taking care of me.
Yeah.
With that kind of schedule, I was normally working somewhere between 18 and 20 hours a day. Um, you're not resting, you're not eating well. Well, I'll speak for me. I wasn't resting. I wasn't eating well.
There
I
you go.
wasn't exercising like I had been because I like to run. I was running 5Ks, 10Ks, had gotten up to half marathon, you know. But there was no time for that because in my mind, it's all about the work. And
Yep.
so I got ill.
Mm,
I got really ill. And I thought I could manage it myself. I could not. And it developed into stage 4 endometriosis. And that's when I was like, something has to give. And that's where Leading Through Living was born
yeah.
because I started talking to other professionals who were like me, who had got down in the dumps physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I developed a program on how to live life on fire, life of peace, joy, and fulfillment, but one that does not sacrifice the hard work that we have put into our businesses because we still like to live nice and to drive nice, right? And dress nice.
Yep. Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow, that's super cool. There's so much there. So you start, I mean, for people listening, I mean, most of us can't even think back to when we were 4 years old. So congratulations that you're able to kind of think back and know that since then you had this passion. But what I kind of like, what the common thread that I heard through that, Lynita, was really from the passion perspective. For somebody listening right now that's in a job and they're just kind of existing, they're not thriving, they're not really happy, they're making the payments, they work 50 hours or 50 weeks a year to get those 2 weeks of vacation. And then wherever they are on those 2 weeks of vacation, they're standing in line and they're complaining about something. That's where I think there's people out there like you that can at least offer and shed another option, on how you did it. And I love that piece. Like you said, you worked and you tried to do things for yourself as far as the business, but you didn't, forget your body and forget your soul and your mind, and you forgot the personal care piece. So I'm just curious, in the Leading Through Living community, I'm assuming that that's a pretty important part then for people, is to make sure and take care of yourself in while you're doing this other stuff on fire.
Absolutely. You have to put yourself first. I grew up just like most people that I meet who are decent, right? That if we gave and we served and we made sure that everybody else was good, then we would be good. And that works for a while until it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because what winds up happening is that we wind up sacrificing the things that are important for our being for the things that are outside of our house. So that's the job, that's the community organizations and the career advancements and the rewards and the recognition and all those things are beautiful. But if you don't have your health, if you don't have your well-being, if you don't have your mental acuity and clarity, then those things don't really mean a whole lot. Um, Dave, I remember clearly one day I was so tired. I was literally passed out in the middle of the floor, and my daughter found me like that. And I was too tired to get up to put my child to bed. She literally put her Disney princess's blanket on me and her pillow under my head because thankfully she did not realize that mama was not getting up because
Yeah.
she couldn't. She thought I was just tired and she was 6. She was a baby. And she kissed me on the forehead. And the only thing I had strength to do when she said goodnight, mama, was to say goodnight, baby. I could not put my child to bed because I was not taking care of myself.
Do you feel like work was an addiction for you?
Oh,
Was it something,
absolutely. I was
you know?
an applause junkie. I
Yeah,
loved having people say, "Oh, Lynita, you're so great. I love having
yeah,
you on my team." I loved that. I lived for that. I intertwined my self-worth and value with rewards, recognition, and accomplishments. I couldn't tell them apart.
yeah. How did you work through that? Because I'm guessing you just kind of stepped on a few toes right now with listeners because that's I mean, especially as a speaker, I mean, you know how that is. We
Oh,
get on a
yeah.
stage and man, we just love that energy and we just love that, right? I just
Oh,
like
yeah.
crave that, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and maybe it's a blind spot for me, Lenita. I look at it as a positive. Obviously it could be in the wrong setting and the wrong dose, I guess you can call it. It could be a negative. How did you identify that this was something that was out of balance for you?
Well, the first thing I had to do was remove the judgment because when we say right and wrong, then automatically our defenses are up. Our
Yeah,
back is up. We're ready to fight.
yeah,
And I totally understand that because, like you said, as a speaker, there is a certain amount of confidence and joy that you have to do this well. Right?
right.
You have to feed off the energy so you can give the people what they need. What I'm saying is that cannot be the defining factor of who you are. And Dave, I've not picked that up from you at all. If you didn't speak another day in your life, I suspect that you would still be fine, that you would still be happy with who you are, how you serve, and where you are in your life. I really suspect that. But there are people, because I was a people, who that would not be the case. If everything at that point in my life had shut down and I was never able to hear great job, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I think I would have just scrunched up and died. And so when you're asking how did I come out of that, well,
Yeah.
it was two parts. And I like being honest with people about how this happened. So my daughter finds me like that in the floor. I know something needs to change. I'm not sure what, and I'm not sure how. Okay. And so I go back to what I was doing. Oh, Lynita, you're just awesome. And then I develop fibroids, then polyps, then endometriosis. And I think that I'm just going to be down a few weeks because that's
Yeah.
what they said. But when they went in, it was so bad
Jeez.
that I was down for months. And when you're down for months, going from the hospital to your bed to finally the couch, I had a lot of time to think. I had a
Wow.
lot of time to evaluate. And I
Yeah.
realized that I would need help. And so I hired a performance coach to help
Right.
me. And what she had me do is write down everything I was involved in. And it was 7 pages long, single space. And she was like, we got to get this down to something manageable. We got it down to 2 pages, and it took 2 years because I was serving on multiple boards. I was serving in leadership on almost all of them. I was running at that time 3 companies. It was the law firm, it was Leading Through Living, and it was Bold Favor Media Group. And under the media group, we had 5 magazines. We had red carpet shows and interviews, and we were in development for another magazine and podcast.
Jeez.
All of that was going on. Under Leading Through Living, I was not just publishing my own books, I was publishing other authors. And at that point, we had 7 bestsellers. Plus, I was helping them to develop their speaking businesses as well as their entrepreneur empires. So she was like, we got to bring this to something manageable.
Wow.
And remember,
Those
I'm
were not
still,
words you wanted to hear, were they?
they were not. They
Yeah.
were not. And and I'm still wifing and mommying and still
Yeah.
serving in the community. My husband's a
Yeah.
pastor, so it was all these things. But I realized what was important. And what was important to me was I knew I wanted to see my child graduate from high school. And at that rate, it wasn't going to happen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How in the world did you like? I mean, I'm assuming since your husband's a pastor that God had to be involved in this,
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
and so it's interesting because I think that people listening, they try to find it within themselves. And they try, and like the first step of 12 step is admitting you have an issue. So it sounded like that would came to you like out of nowhere. I mean, were you just coming along, everything was fine, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I have a problem, or did you kind of know it for a while and pretend it wasn't there?
For me and the people that I've spoken with and worked with,
Yeah.
it's not out of nowhere.
Okay.
There are these little breadcrumbs throughout where you see them, where I saw them, and I was just like, "Oh, it's not a big deal. It'll be okay. It'll pass." Little
Yeah.
glimmers, little glimmers. Hmm.
So, and I liken it to like a cavity, right? If you like, oh my gosh, it hurts.
Yeah,
Without divine intervention, it's not getting better, right? So it's like
correct.
at that point, it's like why? And I mean, oh my gosh, I've had such bad experiences with dentists, so I know all too well. It's super easy to push that down the hill thinking it's going to get better. So I
Hmm.
think one of the great words that you're sharing right now, Lynita, is for people listening, if you see some breadcrumbs, usually there's bread in the area, something, if this is a danger sign, I think the smaller and the earlier you get after it, probably the better. You saw those signs and you kind of just, did you kind of push them down thinking they were going to be okay?
Absolutely did. And the other thing, for me and some of the people that I've talked to, um, those little breadcrumbs appear as inappropriate outbursts, directing frustration to people, places, or things where it just doesn't make sense. You bearing things that you need to speak up or about in the present moment, but you're so busy trying to get to the next thing, you're not dealing with what's in front of you right this moment. Um, the road is paved with those kinds of things.
Sure. Oh,
Yeah.
and I think, and we talked about blind spots earlier, things that you don't see that other people see. So I'm
Mhm.
just curious, Lenny, did your husband have a vision of this? Was he aware that this was happening? Or were you pretty good at sheltering this from him?
No, and one of the benefits of our relationship is that we pretty much grew up together. We got married right after college, right? So 23, 24 years old. And so we've grown up together over these past 25 years. And so he remembers what I was like in college because, we knew each other before we dated. And then what I was like when I worked for someone else, and then what I was like when I started my entrepreneur journey. And so that shift in my personality, he was able to see it. And as much as possible, because remember, we share a pillow and you don't want your wife mad at you all the time, right? As much as possible, he would say something. Now, my
Yep.
parents
Yeah.
and my siblings, they were much more forceful.
Okay.
But I thought the problem was them. I was like, they just can't see the vision,
Yeah. Sure.
But no, they saw the vision. They saw the whole thing. Because
Yeah.
when I was out and about, I looked amazing, sounded strong, and I was happy because I really was happy to be in the place that I was in.
Sure.
But when I got home, I was exhausted. and
Yeah.
there was still more work to do to prepare for the next day. And so there were many all-nighters. There were days when I did not rest. And that
Yeah.
was just crazy. That
Wow.
was crazy.
Yeah, I remember pulling all-nighters in the last company that I owned, and I kind of, full disclosure, I kind of wore it as a badge of honor. I kind of
Yes.
thought it was like this super cool badge. Like, I didn't go home last night. The team did. They came in, they're like, "You look horrible. You have the same clothes on you had yesterday." And I'm waiting for all, like you said, I'm waiting for the accolades. I'm waiting for the, "Oh, you're awesome." And they're just like, "Dude, go home." you know?
Yes,
So
exactly.
it's kind of funny. And then you get mad at them because, well, you don't understand. You're not engaged in your job. I mean, you start coming up with all these excuses. And, you know, I'm thinking for somebody listening right now, so one of two things: either they've seen a breadcrumb and they need to kind of take notice, or they're oblivious to it and there's somebody in their sphere that's helping them, like, "Hey, do you know you have this blind spot? Do you know that you're doing this?" When your husband would kind of give you little bits of feedback, did you receive that well, or were you pretty resistant to him as well?
When he shared it, I would just fix the most immediate thing.
Gotcha.
So it's like you have a cold and your nose is running, you go blow your nose,
Sure.
but you're not taking any medication, you're
Yep.
not resting, you're not
Yep.
hydrating. So the cold never got better. I just had tissues and blew my nose.
So it's Band-Aids then for you, right?
Absolutely. Oh,
Putting
yeah,
a
it was
Band-Aid
much
on a
better.
broken leg doesn't seem to work, right?
Mm-mm. And you know me, I would just put on this cute little cast that looked like a boot,
Yeah.
and then people just was like, "Oh, that's so cute."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, hey, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to unpack the Live Life on Fire formula that Lynita's got. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. Honored to be hanging out with Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell, CEO of Leading Through Living. I got them backwards. I didn't know if I was going to make it through there. Leading Through Living community. And in that community, and in your work and in your books, you're on your fifth number one bestseller called Live Life on Fire, which is your most recent. And in this new life that you have, you found this Live Life on Fire formula. So share with us what that looks like for somebody that is interested in learning more about the fire formula.
Absolutely. So when we look at our lives, we have been told that if we worked hard, we would be successful and we would live happily ever after. And the ever after never really came. And so we wound up continuing to go back to what we knew, which is to succeed and build beautiful lives. But what we wound up having is happiness versus joy. And we learned to measure our lives in a way that said, if these external things are not happening, then there must be something wrong with me. And so we learn to live perfect lives instead of excellent ones. So living life on fire is a journey in discovering our own peace, our own joy, our own fulfillment without sacrificing the things that we have worked to create. And so the first thing we have to do is we really have to take time for ourselves. And that is to take time to breathe. And I know that that sounds weird, but how many of us really take time to be in the present moment of right now?
Yep.
Not really, because we're taught to always anticipate, to think about what comes next. But next can't come if now is not taken care of. Not that it won't, it can't. And so the first thing we have to do is be honest when we look at our lives and take a breath and be in this moment right here, right now, and determine what's working, what's not, and what can go. One of the things that I guide my clients through, Dave, is if you're going to take something on, something has to roll off because that is the only way that we're going to maintain the balance of our lives. So that's the first thing. We got to breathe. We got to be in the present moment, which leads to the second thing is silence. We really don't take time to allow the communication centers of our brain to rest. We're always talking, we're always engaging, we're communicating, especially with what I call these mini rocket launchers that we keep in our pockets, which are our phones. We're always connected. But that means that we don't have an opportunity to disconnect for long periods of time. And I sincerely ask people that I work with, that I speak with, that I engage with, try and take at least twice a year where you just take a weekend and unplug totally. I'm talking about put the phone down, have your assistant manage social and emails, tell your family where you're going, but it's important that you put down all of it and just be quiet to give yourself a chance to not even talk if you can. I normally take at least one, possibly two times to go through a retreat with the Art of Living Foundation called the Art of Silence, where we check in on Thursday, we check out on Friday, and we commit to no phones. And we're not even talking. If you need to communicate something, you need to write it down or you need to point. But for the most part, it's being quiet.
Is that hard
And
for you?
oh my gosh, the first time I thought I was going to die.
Uh, oh my gosh. I just was a high eye on the disc. You and I love to talk. So I'm just like biting my tongue going, how in the world are we going to do this?
But I tell you, Dave, after each time I came back stronger with amazing ideas and the energy that I was emitting, the magnetism was unreal. Like
Hey,
things that I remember praying for, working for that had not broken yet, I was not worried about them anymore and they came. Which leads to the next thing is you got to learn to just be. And that is hard when you're talking about us, entrepreneurs, careerists, people who are told, go, 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 go. You're telling me that if I just stop and I allow, that I don't have to push and prod and bully. No, no, you really, really don't. I'm not telling you that you won't have to follow the law. You do. I'm still a lawyer, right? I'm not telling you that you don't have to continue to train and to take self-education seriously. You absolutely do. And you got to still get out and meet people. But we all love people, and so we're just meeting a new friend. Rather, what I'm saying is the things that we were taught before, burning the midnight out, hour, burning the candle at both ends of the stick, the sleepless nights, the worrying, those are behind us now. We don't have to do those things anymore. Peace brings peaceful people. Joy allows us to see gratitude and thanksgiving and abundance in everything. Even when things seem to be going wrong, we know that that's for our good too, because that means that something better is coming. And success is not measured anymore with money and clothes and status and cars and houses. It is measured in the time that we have doing the things that we love and we're called and empowered to do. And then that brings all of those things to
sure.
us.
Yeah.
And I'm making that different a distinction there because a lot of people think that I'm saying we're going to give everything away and go live in the mountains. No, no, that's not what we're doing. What I'm saying is we live a beautiful life because we're peaceful, joyful, and fulfilled, not in spite of
Sure. Well, and joy and peace feel like, I mean, for the average person listening right now, that feels like almost opposite of, the day-to-day grind. And there's deadlines, there's new customers, there's
it.
budgets, there's spreadsheets, there's all this stuff, right? That,
Yes.
we could be doing or need to be doing. So that's where I think it really becomes, I'm a black or white thinker, Lynita. So I think it's either fun or it's not fun. I think
Yeah.
it's either joy or it's work. So in my mind, I'm trying to find that middle where you can be joyful in your work or you can be peaceful through that problem. And those are the hard things. So for somebody that's listening right now that is struggling with it like me, was there anything that you were able to tell yourself, or how did you kind of work that through that for yourself?
So I am also a black and white thinker. So I totally understand. It took a while for me to get to where I am right now, where I see peace and joy and even being fulfilled weave throughout my existence, throughout my day. I had to start by thinking of it as pearls that I was weaving on a string and making myself a beautiful necklace. And so you're finding spots through your day that are peaceful. Because absolutely, am I peaceful when I'm negotiating with a another person, an adversary on behalf of my client who's being sued? Absolutely
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
I am being a very aggressive and putting myself forward, trying to get the best outcome for my client.
sure.
But before I went into that and after I went into that, there absolutely was peace. There absolutely was
Interesting.
peace. And then the joy part is just realizing that that is within. Um, Not becoming emotionally hijacked depending on what's going on outside. You're happy if the sun is out, you're sad if it's not. What about appreciating that we made it to see the day and we're able to see the sun out and feel the wind on our face? So it's the moments that we are able to appreciate life as it is. And
Sure.
eventually there'll be more moments.
Nice. Wow. So far, we've said take time to breathe for yourself, be silent when needed to disconnect, just be. Um, Interesting on the just be thing. I remember where, I mean, I was raised with my parents were like, don't just stand there, do something, right? That's what
Yes.
my parents would say. Well, then I learned about Moses and how he got stuck right at the edge where there was an enemy behind him and the Red Sea in front of him, and then the thing changed, and all of a sudden it was like, don't just do something, stand there. And it was like totally different, right? So I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, this just be thing is so contrary to what I was raised. Don't just, if you're not cleaning, you're standing and you're not doing something, so there was just some negative. I was grown up with standing there doing nothing as a negative. Did you have that same thing, or how did that kind of transition for you for just be? That must have been tough for you too.
It was, and it's so interesting that you use the analogy of Moses and the parting of the Red Sea because that's kind of how it happened for me. I had in my mind that if I wasn't moving, then nothing was happening. I
Yep.
was constantly in motion. Like on this side of it, people were like, I always wondered how you did all that. Um,
Right?
and then the transition into the Moses experience, I realized that there were things that were done prior to. And so that in that moment where it required something big, the big ask, he was able to stand there and allow. But Moses had an incredible relationship with his creator, right? He had a deep and abiding faith,
Yep.
and he did the work of going within and knowing that he had done everything that he could up to that point, and now it was time to stand back and let somebody bigger than him do the rest of it. And
Yep.
I think that was part of it for me because there was a part of me that didn't believe that anybody could do as good a job as I could. And so that was part of the staying in motion. And I wasn't taking time for the meditations and the prayers. So it's talking to God and listening, which is part of the being, right? And then once I had done everything that I could in a situation to just stop. And that was hard. But I
Yep.
tell you, Dave, once I got to that point, I became one of those people who was able to stop whatever I was doing to give my full and undivided attention to the person in front of me, which is a
Wow.
big deal because I was the type of
Yep.
person hold on a minute, let me just
Yep.
finish this one thing. And now I can just be like, okay, I'll come back to it.
Yeah. And that's where EQ comes in. So I know that you do some work with emotional intelligence, and I think that's so powerful to be aware, self-aware. I think is one of those pieces. We do a lot of work with DISC and EQ, and self-awareness is so missing, I feel, in a lot of today's business climate, where they're not really aware of what they're doing to other people. They're not aware of how they're, affecting other people's lives and stuff. So that just be you have to be really aware of your surroundings and what's going on right there. That's got to be really tough. So as we start to land, what's number four and number five? I'm anxious to hear these. So far I'm excited. I hope I don't have to eat my words if there's a hard one coming here.
No, it gets easier. The flow and awe. So the hard stuff is behind us now. Now we're living a life that is consistent with our understanding of who we are, of our skills, gifts, and talents, of our blind spots, because now we're bringing in people who we respect, love, and admire, and who feel the same way about us, and we can listen to them. And so when they say, okay, you've got too much going on, I wasn't feeling warm and fuzzy about the way that the conversation went the last time we talked, that your back isn't up. You can lean in and say, please expound, tell me more. How
Yeah,
how can I fix that? But you can't skip those first steps. And when you're living in flow, other skills, gifts, and abilities start to open up for you. Other opportunities for business start opening up for you. And this, I guess it does get a little tough now that I'm thinking about it, Dave,
oh,
because
sure. Now
now,
you're changing your tune.
yeah,
Thanks,
yeah,
Lynette. Yeah.
I am. I'm
Way to
sorry
suck
because
me in. Nice job. Yeah, no, it's all good. The water's warm. Come on in.
right. I just
Nice
thought about it
job.
because you're now being offered more, but you can't forget the lessons from before. You
Sure,
have to continue to say no to that so I can say yes to this. So even when something is really cool, you have to roll off. And so that's part of staying in the flow, knowing that what went on before was for you, it was good. I still appreciate, love, and admire and respect everything that I did before, and it positioned me where I am. But knowing that if I'm going to continue in this trajectory of joy, peace, fulfillment that brings success, rather me having to chase it is coming to me, then I have to continue to let things go so I continue to move forward. So that's the flow. So
sure.
that's learning to trust yourself, trust what is happening for you is actually good stuff. Letting things go once they have served their purpose, and that does include people sometimes, and having that support system around you of people that you love and who love you, respect, and admire, who you can listen to when they tell you to sit down. And then the last one is awe. You're now living a life that other people are coming and saying, this is what I want for myself. How do I do this? And instead of you saying to someone else, because I used to be this person, I would see someone and I'm like, you know what you should do? I don't even, not anymore. People will
Right.
come to me and they'll say, I really like the way that you're living. I like the energy flowing from you, and I would like to learn more. And now you're in a place where you can share that because you
Right.
have developed a framework or blueprint where you can share that with other people and take them through a program. And for me, that has been the Live Life on Fire coaching program and
Sure.
also my Prioritize and Empower You retreats. And so it's being in a place where you are in awe of how far you've come, but you know there is more, and you're willing to share all parts of you, opening that part of you that vulnerability. You're willing to embrace that.
And there's got to be a fine line between awe becoming an ego thing, like I'm really good, I'm awesome, I'm the best. There's a kind of a fine line between that and the humility that would go with that, or the thankfulness, the gratefulness. So did you struggle with that at all? Oh my gosh, I'm so good. The world needs me. Did you struggle with that and where it becomes unhealthy?
No, because in the step before it and flow, I
Yeah.
had this support circle to
Uh,
keep the head from growing. That's why you have to do that in that step.
Gotcha.
That's
Okay.
the
So we
importance.
can't skip flow and go right to awe.
You
Okay.
cannot.
Darn it. I try every time. I'm
I
sorry. I'm
know.
trying, guys.
I appreciate it though.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like four steps better. Let's skip that flow thing. Let's just jump right to Oz. So that's so cool. Well, we could talk about this all day. I got two questions and I'm going to let you go. What would your tip of the day be for somebody listening, Lynita? Maybe it's something that we've covered already. Maybe it's something that's burning on your heart, but what would your tip of the day be today?
Yeah, my tip of the day is to truly embrace this present moment of now because without it, tomorrow cannot come. And we do that by embracing the living life in excellence rubric rather than a perfect life. And the difference being that an excellent life is where you set the standard because perfect literally means that you have met the standards or exceeded them. But who sets those standards? It wasn't you. And so I'm saying if you want to live an excellent life and really enjoy, I would say 99% of every breath you take, then you build your own measurements, your own standards, and building grace to them so that maybe it's not 100% today, but you gave it the best you had and you are good with it and you're willing to leave it where it is and move on. That is satisfying and that is fulfilling.
It's awesome. I mean, Patton said, if a man does his best, what else is there? And I
Mm.
think that, that's so powerful for us to really look back at our day and be appreciative of it. So often we're half empty people where, hey, we didn't
Mm.
get this, we didn't get that, rather than look at the half full. So thank you for sharing that. Embrace the now in whatever that means. Now I can say again, because I'm talk about the dentist way too much, but I'm sitting in that dentist chair with my mouth, and then they got a jackhammer in my mouth. I am not embracing that now. I'm not there yet. So keep praying for me. But it's like, man, most of the time I'm able to embrace the now. So for people listening, just embrace something good that's going on right now for you. Embrace where you're at. And it's just a starting spot. It just gets better, it gets bigger as you get wider, and that's so awesome. For people that want to learn more about you, Lynita, that want to understand more about what's going on at Leading Through Living, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
It would be my website. So it's LynitaMitchell-Blackwell.com, Lynita. And so from there, we can connect in every way. You can join my email list, follow on social, find out what's coming up next. And I am happy to connect with you.
Awesome. That is so cool. And as we say each week, there's good stuff here, especially today. So please don't jump into your next podcast. Don't jump into your next activity. Do what she said, number two, and silence for a minute. Just after this, be done. And just, let it sink in and walk away with one thing that you want to do differently, or you want to try, you want to think about, you want to expand upon. And maybe it's connecting with Lynita, maybe it's going to her website, but rather than again just jump into your next activity, please be intentional and just sit with this. I'm going to, because I took notes, and every time I take notes, I got to do something with these. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you for sharing your story with us and being vulnerable. And I can't wait to keep learning from you. Is there a sixth book on the way, by the way?
It is coming out in the spring.
Oh, uh-oh. Do we know what it's called yet, or we gotta wait?
You gotta wait.
Ah, no, come on. I wanted it to be only on the Positive Polarity podcast. Did you hear Lynita's new book? So, all right, we will wait till spring. And thank you again so much for all you're doing, and can't wait to keep learning from you.
Thank you.